clarified what those are and made them more understandable. Similar with the roles and responsibilities. So we made it clear what those are for each of those bodies, so that if you are involved in a variance application, it's more clear now what that process is compared to your current regulations.
And which would be what? What would be the difference?
Any questions right now?
Let him finish with this, and then we'll answer questions.
Yeah. I'm going to take as much time as I need to take. This has been about a 1.5-year process, and so I will do my best to explain that. And my suggestion would be, if you have questions at the end, raise those and we can respond either tonight or afterwards. Okay, and then the fourth area of improvement is the use district structure. So what we did is we created development regulation tables so that you're now able to look at the regulations and use a table to identify what is permitted and what is not permitted for each district and each use. And again, we modernized those tables. So now you have tables that define whether something's permitted, not permitted, where it's permitted, and then we clarified there are conditional uses. Those are uses that would need additional approval, such as the Board of Zoning Appeals approval, and then what standards those apply to. I think it's important to note that some things we didn't do. Right? So what we didn't do was create any new districts. We have not created any new zoning districts in the township. We did not change any lot sizes or setbacks. So the setbacks you have today are the setbacks you're going to have tomorrow. So those are typically the areas where a lot of change happens. That did not occur. So what, other than 3 zone map corrections that I'm about to show you, your property is zoned the same as it was before, and there are not zone map changes.
Mine's not.
This
Except
year.
for 3.
Continue on.
It's funny.
Okay. So, and then lastly, under number 4, we modernized the zoning code definitions. So, again, part of the rule and the process of zoning is to make it clear what is the term and how are they defined, so that we can all agree what is a certain use and how it's going to be evaluated. And frankly, your current code is lacking in that. There's a lot of terms that are in the code that are not defined, and there are uses that are modern that are not in the code. So we've rectified that. I expect that over the use of this code over the next few years, Mr. Lawson or residents will point out that there are deficiencies that have to be corrected, and they'll say, hey, we need to add this. And that's something that is typical and occurs regularly. Okay, so again, not super fun. A lot of these zoning things are important to how this operates. I'm going to run through these quickly. We created similar use provisions. That's an opportunity for someone to say, my use that I'm proposing is not in the code, but I think I should be allowed, and you have a process for that. Okay? It's a safety valve that allows someone to come to the board and say, you should allow this use. Typically that happens if the township agrees, and then there's a text amendment that says, okay, let's create widget factory that we didn't anticipate. Okay. Use specific standards. We created you already have a fair number of those in your code right now. So think of, for example, a daycare. So maybe someone has a daycare, and there's a couple of specific things related to operation of a daycare, like having a playground, having a fence, or having a certain number of lighting or off-street parking. We've specified those in the code and made it clear what those are.
But they
much
already
easier
have
to
that.
understand than the current regulations. We created a lot of accessory use standards. Those have to deal with sheds and fences and all the accessory uses that come with land development. Temporary use regulations, we've created those as well, so that you can understand when you need a permit, when you don't need a permit, and what those durations are. And those are all tableized, and there's very little discretion involved. It's just, do you need it or do you not need it?
And just pay.
And then there are provisions for plan development district. So that has to do with if you want to do a larger development and you want to get a rezoning, you've got that option in your code today. It's called a plan development. Did very little changes other than formatting. And then we did amend the code, proposed to amend the code to address principal use energy development. Pretty fancy word, but basically for solar farms or wind farms at a utility scale. So if somebody wants to do that, that would be the process. Someone would come and get a plan development, they would get a zone change to that, there would be public hearings, and they would have to submit a plan that showed that they meet the standards in the code, and there would be public input, and then the elected officials would make that decision. So we think that's a good way to address that use. It puts the authority in your elected officials, and it has a high level of public input that can control it. A couple more things, I know you're gonna restless. Non-conforming use standards, we beefed those up. Again, your current code was pretty lean on that, made it clear what is a non-conforming use, non-conforming lot, non-conforming structure. We made those rules, we provided a safety valve. What do I do if I can't meet those rules, and how do I get relief for that? And then general provisions. So you're a highly agricultural community. Most agricultural activity is exempt from what I've just talked about. Okay, so by Ohio Revised Code, if you're agricultural and you're operating in agricultural, almost everything that we're talking about here is exempt. Okay?
Almost.
If you are talking about, but if you have agricultural land, but you're not doing agricultural activity, right, then you might have to get a permit. Okay? Landscaping and buffers, we beefed those up. We also created what we call environmental performance standards. That's so that if someone's creating a lot of noise or dust or other industrial type of activity, there are provisions that say you've
We
exceeded
already
our
have that. We
allowance.
have those regulations enforced.
And the last bullet statement on that is measurements, computations, exceptions. Again, we've created a whole section of the code that shows graphically how you measure, how you define, and how this happens. So by doing that, you are now comparable to other communities in Claremont County. So, you know, these standards are very similar to what other communities have, and we believe that.
And that they all complain about.
So there's a couple of policy issues. I'm getting close. Bear with me. A couple of policy issues. One is adult entertainment. I know that's not real popular to talk about, but there are First Amendment rights that you need to address adult entertainment. And working with the trustees, the approach has been that we're going to define what adult entertainment uses are, but we're not going to permit them in the code. Medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, that's kind of a moving target right now. I think you understand that with state legislature and so on. We have provided some general standards in your code as drafted. Medical or recreational marijuana operation would be permitted in a B1 district, which is your business district, your neighborhood business district, with standards. And that would be a conditional use. So you'd have to have a hearing. That's in addition to what other licensing requirements that the state has. So there's a whole other process that involves, but that would be from a zoning standpoint.
So there
And then we created fence wall and hedge regulations. They were lacking in the current. Okay, I'm going to go through the proposed map corrections. I said about 20 minutes. I've been a little over that. There are 3 zoning map changes that I'm going to ask Mr. Lawson to help me with because he's more familiar with the actual map. The first one is this area here, which is zoned agriculture